Turn 4. 14 drivers died at this speedway. Most people know one of them. Almost nobody knows the other 13. For 42 years, the people running this sport kept sending drivers back to the same corner. Same wall, same banking, same answer. When a car hit it at 190 miles per hour, how many deaths does it take before someone decides that enough is enough? This is the story of Turn 4. Turn 4 has been here since 1959, built into 31 degrees of banked concrete, designed to carry cars from the back straight and slingshot them toward the finish line at the highest possible speed. In 1959, that meant 140 miles per hour. By 2001, it meant 190. The wall never changed. For 42 years, cars got faster, engineering got more sophisticated, television audiences got larger, prize money got bigger. The wall stayed exactly where it was. A concrete barrier with nothing between it and a car arriving sideways at racing speed. Every engineer who studied Turn 4 understood what that combination produced. What they disagreed about, for 4 decades, was whose problem it was to fix. This is the story of what that disagreement cost. Before we go any further, the title of this video made a promise. 14 drivers died at this facility. You deserve to know every one of them. Marshall Teague, February 11th, 1959. The Speedway had been open 11 days. Teague wasn't even there to race. He was attempting a closed-course land speed record, trying to be the first man to crack 180 miles per hour on a banked oval. He was 38 years old. They called him the King of the Beach. He'd won more races on the old Daytona road course than almost anyone alive. On his record attempt, the car became airborne. He was thrown out on impact. His friend, Fireball Roberts, who would one day die at another racetrack, was found sitting on the pit wall, crying, when the news spread. 11 days after the Speedway opened, before a single points race had been run, George Amick, April 4th, 1959, 52 days after Teague, the same Speedway. Amick's Indy car exited the west turn and hit the wall. He was gone before anyone reached him. 2 drivers, 1 track, 52 days. Friday Hassler, February 17th, 1972. Not the Daytona 500, a 125-mile qualifying race on the Thursday before it. Lap 19, a blown tire triggered a 13-car pileup. Hassler's car spun around and was hit head-on. He died instantly. Most people have never heard his name. Ricky Knotts, February 14th, 1980. Another qualifying race. Turn 1, not Turn 4, but the same concrete walls, the same banking, the same answer when the car hit them. Bruce Jacoby, February 17th, 1983. A multi-car pileup in a support race. The kind of race that doesn't make the national broadcast. The kind of death that gets a brief mention and then disappears. 5 names. Most people watching this video have never heard a single one of them. 9 more would follow. And eventually, the sport would run out of drivers it could afford to lose. By 1994, Turn 4 had been collecting names for 35 years. Nobody had fixed the wall. Nobody had widened the runoff. And in 1 week in February 1994, the corner made its most explicit argument yet. Neil Bonnet had no business being at Daytona. In 1990, a crash had left him with amnesia so severe he couldn't remember his own children's faces. He spent 4 years in rehabilitation, slowly, painfully rebuilding the memories that made him who he was. When he finally got them back, he went racing again. February 11th, practice session, Turn 3, not Turn 4 this time, but the same banking, the same wall, the same answer. His car drifted, hit the concrete. Neil Bonnet died on impact. He was 47 years old. The sport stopped. Flags at half-mast, tributes on every broadcast. The paddock grieved openly. Neil Bonnet was somebody. Everyone knew his name. His death felt like a loss the whole sport recognized. 4 days later, February 14th, a man named Rodney Orr went out for a practice session. Most people at the track that week couldn't have told you who Rodney Orr was. He was 31, a rookie. He'd spent years knocking around the lower levels of motorsport, working his way up, saving money, taking whatever seat he could get. This was supposed to be his shot. The Daytona 500, the biggest race in America. He never got to start it. His car lost control entering turn 2, hit the banking, hit the wall. Rodney Orr died. 2 men, 4 days apart. Same track, same walls, same week. The sport mourned Neil Bonnet for days. Tributes, memorials, a full reckoning with the loss. Rodney Orr got a mention, and then the broadcast moved on. One man's death stopped the sport cold. The other man's death, it just didn't. The Daytona 500 ran 4 days later. Turn 4 was exactly where it had always been. Here is the thing that turns this story from a tragedy into something harder to forgive. By the time Bonnet and Orr died, a device existed that could have saved them. It had existed for 13 years. In 1981, a biomechanical engineer at Michigan State named Dr. Robert Hubbard began working on what would become the HANS device, the head and neck support system. He'd spent years studying what actually killed drivers in high-speed crashes. Not the impact, not the fire, not the car disintegrating. The head, specifically, the moment when a car stops in milliseconds and the driver's head keeps moving. That violent forward snap fractures the base of the skull. Basilar skull fracture. It kills faster than anything else a crash can do. Hubbard designed a device that anchored the helmet to the shoulder harness, stopping that snap before it could happen. His co-developer Jim Downing first raced with a version of it in 1986. The patent was filed in 1990. Drivers who tried it said it felt wrong, unnatural, like something was holding them back. Some worried they couldn't get out of a burning car fast enough wearing it. Teams argued it should be the driver's choice. NASCAR's culture said safety improvements were options, not requirements. These weren't unreasonable concerns. The people making them weren't villains. They were people operating inside a sport that had never been told it had to change. You can argue about whether the resistance made sense. You cannot argue about what happened to the drivers who raced without it. These 2 deaths didn't happen at Daytona, but they belong in this video because the injury that killed both of these drivers was identical to the injury killing drivers at Turn 4. Same mechanism, same fracture, same device that wasn't mandated, different track, same preventable death. Adam Petty was 19 years old. His grandfather was Richard Petty, the king of NASCAR, 7 championships, 200 race wins, the name on the side of every car that mattered. His father was Kyle Petty. His family had been in motorsport since before Adam was born. 2 months before he died, Adam was signing autographs at tracks where fans were already asking him what it would feel like to win his first championship, whether he'd surpass his grandfather's record, what the next 30 years of the Petty dynasty would look like. He'd barely started. Practice session, throttle stuck, car hit the wall. Adam Petty died of a basilar skull fracture. 19 years old. 8 weeks later, July 7th, same track, Kenny Irwin was 30, fast enough that people in the paddock were starting to say his name in the same sentence as championships. He'd come from Indy car racing. He had something to prove, and the speed to prove it. Practice session, throttle stuck, car hit the wall, same corner. 8 weeks later, Kenny Irwin died of a basilar skull fracture. The sport investigated throttle mechanisms. The HANS device, which had existed since 1981 and specifically prevented basilar skull fractures, was still not mandated. Turn 4 had been waiting 42 years for this moment. It had taken rookies and veterans. It had taken names the sport recognized and names the sport forgot within a week. On February 18, 2001, it was about to take the one name in American motorsport that nobody could explain away. Dale Earnhardt was 49 years old, and he was the most famous racing driver his country had ever produced. 7 championships, 2 decades of dominance. The Intimidator, a man who had turned the act of winning races into something that felt personal to millions of people who'd never been near a racetrack. He had never won the Daytona 500, 23 attempts. Every February, this track found a way to take it from him. This year, something different was happening. His son Dale Jr. was leading. His teammate Michael Waltrip, who had never won a cup race in his career, was second. Earnhardt was third, blocking, using the most experienced racing brain in the sport to hold back everyone trying to get to his people. The father holding the door open so his son could win the race he never had. He only needed one more corner, final lap, turn 4. Contact from behind pushed his car up the banking. It turned sideways at 190 miles per hour. It hit the wall. The broadcast commentators assumed he was fine. The crowd watched Waltrip cross the finish line and started celebrating. Dale Earnhardt did not walk away from turn 4. He died of a basilar skull fracture, the same injury that killed Adam Petty, the same injury that killed Kenny Irwin. 8 months earlier, the Hans device was not mandated when Dale Earnhardt died. NASCAR mandated it 4 months later. What changed after Earnhardt wasn't knowledge. The knowledge had existed for years. What changed was the sport's willingness to act on it. The Hans device was mandated. Safer barriers, steel and foam absorbing impact instead of transferring it, began replacing the concrete walls that had lined Daytona's banking since 1959. Professor Sid Watkins, the neurosurgeon who had watched Ayrton Senna die at Imola in 1994 and held his head on the track, who had used Ronnie Peterson's death at Monza in 1978 to force Formula One to rebuild its entire medical infrastructure, had spent years sitting across from NASCAR and saying, "You need to do what we did." After Earnhardt, they finally did. Hans device developed. 1981. Hans device mandated. June 2001. The safer barrier was installed at Turn 4 in 2002. 1 year after Earnhardt, 7 years after Bonnet and Orr, 43 years after Turn 4 took its first life. Turn 4 is still there, different wall now, foam and steel instead of bare concrete, runoff that wasn't there before, a corner that has killed nobody since the safety reforms that Earnhardt's death finally forced through. But the corner is still there, and the banking is still 31 degrees. And the physics are still exactly what they were in 1959 when Marshall Teague's car became airborne 11 days after the Speedway opened. 14 drivers died here, most of their names you'd never heard before today. The sport remembered the ones it couldn't explain away. The rest became the deaths that came before, the ones that produced reports, recommendations, and nothing that changed the wall they hit. The Hans device existed 20 years before it was mandated. The barrier technology existed before every driver who died hitting concrete walls without it. What finally changed wasn't the knowledge. It was the name on the car that hit the wall. How many drivers had to die before the people in charge decided that was enough? The answer is 14. And the 14th one was the one they couldn't explain away. If this made you think differently about what you watch every February, subscribe. New video every week. We'll see you there.